You are watching Access LaPorte County, Channel 97. Coming up next, the special workshop of the Michigan City Common Council. You can find information for this meeting by visiting www.accesslaportecounty.org.
It is 4:30. I'm going to call this workshop to start. And this workshop was called to discuss the quiet zone and the amount of money and the purpose for that quiet zone. So if anyone that is in the audience would like to speak to the issue, or the council members, whoever would like to lead off, be my guest.
I'd like to say something.
Could you come to the mic and give us your name and address, please?
This mic? Hi, I'm Judy Kowal. My last name is Kowal. I live on the far east side of town in the Michiana Shores section, but it's actually Michigan City. And I live 2 blocks from the CSX tracks where the Amtrak goes by every hour and blows its whistle really loud every hour. So you have to stop talking or stop doing what you're doing because it's so deafening. So I would like the CSX line and any other train line to be included, not just the South Shore line.
Thank you. Thank you, Julie. Good point.
I got a quick question. Maybe Skylar, you may be able to answer that one. Is it the same process for what we're looking with the South Shore versus the CSX, or is that a completely different thing?
I'm actually going to let Mr. Moore take that because my understanding is these are three totally separate railroads. You got Amtrak, CSX, South Shore, or
CN.
Yeah, I can't remember the name.
I don't know if you need my name and address.
I don't know, Michael. We might.
Michael Nolan, 2711 Floral Trail, Long Beach, Indiana, 46360, president of the South Shore Line. Anytime a community wants to have a quiet zone, the community is the one that applies. It's not the railroad. So the community would need to apply to the Federal Railroad Administration for a quiet zone. To establish a quiet zone, there are specific qualifications that the Federal Railroad Administration looks for. And you have to evaluate each different traffic pattern, the crossings, the amount of accidents that have occurred at the station, the opportunities for what the Federal Railroad Administration calls supplemental safety measures to reduce the risk of drivers going around gates and being struck by a train. So the FRA takes into consideration in a quiet zone application everything that you're going to do to make the crossing safer, to qualify it, to give them the comfort level that they can make it a quiet zone. The general rule is that railroad and a railroad engineer approaching the crossing will blow the whistle as a sign of warning. Quiet zones are one step removed from that. So in order for the Federal Railroad Administration to be comfortable, they want to know that you've taken enhanced measures to restrict motorists from driving around a gate. And if you think about a typical gate, it covers 1/2 of an intersection, the direction of traffic, but the other half of the intersection, which is the opposite direction of traffic, generally isn't covered. So what happens oftentimes in these grade crossing accidents is impatient drivers with a gate that's down will drive around and into the opposite lane of traffic across a crossing. That's where the accidents occur. So the Federal Railroad Administration is going to look for what have you done on those crossings. So you would need to do like we have done. On the phone call today, we have Tim Oster from Benish Engineering. Tim has done the analysis to what would it take to qualify for the South Shoreline crossings that are before the council right now to qualify for a quiet zone. It's a number of things. Closing crossings gets you a recognition from the FRA. Making sure you've got to have gates, lights, and bells. at a railroad crossing. And as you know, most of the crossings that we have here in Michigan City right now are crossbucks or stop signs. So you've got to investigate lights and bells. In many of those cases, you have to have 4 quadrant gates. Think of the gates that you have where you cross US 12, where Amtrak comes across down by the lake. Those gates come across the entire crossing on both sides. You can have concrete medians that prevent drivers from driving around into the opposite side of traffic, so that they can't drive around the downed gates. There's a whole list of things that you can do. We have done those, and Tim Oster is on the phone, and we can go through the things that we have done for the application to qualify on behalf of Michigan City for the South Shoreline. But your question was, can you do that for the rest of them? You would have to undertake that study. You would have to hire an engineering firm. They would do traffic counts and studies. They would analyze the past accidents over the last 5 and 10 years, and they would then evaluate the opportunities to do these supplemental safety measures. You would then have to put in place, engineer them, and then be ready to construct them, like we're talking about here today, to have those other crossings qualified.
And that would have to be for each individual rail line.
Yes, absolutely. And the rail line would have to agree. So the community is the one who makes the application, but the railroad itself, they would have to cooperate. The city's going to petition the FRA. It's your application, but doesn't mean that the railroad has to agree. We're in support of Michigan City's application at the South Shoreline. You will have to go to Amtrak. You'll have to go to the CN. You'll have to go to CSX for whatever rail lines are going through the town, and get them to agree that with the improvements that the city would, and they'll ask you to pay for them, with the improvements the city is willing to put forward, will they support your application to go forward with that quiet zone? I'm not saying they won't, but I just want to point out that is in each railroad's jurisdiction.
I have a question for you, Mr. Nolan. You guys already did this study, right?
Yes, we did.
How long did that take?
Well, Tim, you're on the call. I mean, this was a process over probably at least a year period of time.
Okay.
To do this. Tim, can you jump on? Are you able to
Yes.
chime in?
Hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. We did the initial evaluation back in 2017. And so the typical study probably takes anywhere from 4 to 6 months just to complete the study and analyze all the crossings. And as part of that study, we always have a diagnostic meeting with the railroad and the FRA during that study, so that we can confirm that all the safety improvements that we have planned for each crossing is agreeable with the railroad and the FRA. And then based on that study, that is where we can start the implementation process. But then there's several, like the NOI, the notice of intent that's before you today, then there's several steps through that process that have to be taken after you decide this is what we're going to do and everybody's in agreement.
Well, and then coupled with that, Tim, is the engineering and process to determine how much those improvements are going to cost as well. And then in our case, we've got pricing on the double track project. As this board knows, this council knows, as part of the double track project, we agreed in 2016 that we would study the opportunity to put a quiet zone in place. So that's why we did it in 2017. We felt that with the improvements that we were making, that Michigan City may qualify, and it was something that was expressed to us that would be your desire. So that's why we started that process in 2017. It'll get refreshed, but we have done the study.
Is there I got a question for Mr. Oster. Does your firm specialize in this type of railroad management studies and things of that nature? Or are you a general engineering firm? Tim?
The firm that I work for now, Alfred Benish and Company, is a general engineering firm. They do railroad work, civil design. I mean, they're a wide range of work. Previously to moving to Benish about 2 years ago, I was with a smaller firm called CTC Incorporated, which is the firm in 2017 that I was with. And we did a lot of work at that firm over 10 years for different cities across the country. And I've been doing quiet zones since 2005, since the rule came into effect for different cities and throughout the country.
Okay, thank you. Gene, sure.
I, for one, I would like to even broaden the scope of quiet zones. I've had calls out in my ward, 6th Ward, right? Yeah. And then I lay in bed every morning, and just like clockwork, everyone has woke up with the 5:30 South Shore coming through. That's our alarm clock. I think it just makes sense, being that South Shore has already taken the ball and ran with it. Why should one part of the city have a quiet zone, and then the rest, as Councilman Downey articulated last meeting, why shouldn't you do the whole thing? I mean, it makes sense. And are we going to squabble over $1 million? I hope not. I mean, $1 million getting started. Sure, it's going to cost, if we continue on, it's going to cost more, but hey, we'd have to have the study.
Mr. Damley, you yield?
Oh, I'm sorry. So I'm just gonna say, from a perspective in attending the last 2 Revolution conferences and talking about social equity, Angie Nelson Deitch, 126 Lady Lane, councilperson. I grew up on Edward Street, and our street was torn up without any acknowledgement to my parents or any of the neighbors. And, you know, it's one of those things that sometimes we have to take the responsibility for residents. And so social equity, just because there's not a complaint doesn't mean it's not an equity issue. And I believe that this is an equity issue. 10 million versus 1 million to do this. Just because someone's not complaining doesn't mean it's right. And I think that with ARPA money, there's an opportunity to do something with it. I just know that we felt, you know, the people that were impacted years ago, we had no say in it. And so things happen to communities like this all the time because they have no input. They feel like it's just supposed to happen to them. So if we want, you know, to wait until the next part of this thing is done, 6 to 8 years, you know, beyond us. But I think just like with anything else, when you're bringing all the resources together, it's probably cheaper to do it now than it would be 6 to 8 years from now. So my only thing is I support it because I think it's the right thing to do. And it's not about the money on this thing. I think if we're going to do a quiet zone, we should do it for the rest of that project. Now, the other areas, we have to talk to CSX, we got to talk to Amtrak, we got to talk to all these people. That's something different. But for this project, well, you know, everybody is already, you know, they're already doing it. So let's just use it and do what we need to with this money that we got. So.
And let's not forget, Hammond already have one in place. Quiet zone. So, City of Hammond.
Mr. Damley.
Thank you, Chairman. And I concur with what Councilman Engineer Nelson Deitch has said, and I made this point at the last meeting. And what really made me came around is I wanted to know how long would it be before stage 2 of the whole project actually took place, and the comment was made 6 to 8 years. We could be talking about where one side of the tracks has the quiet zones right up to the boulevard, but then coming into the neighborhood that I grew up Angie grew up on Edward Street. I grew up on Woodland. And so we're very familiar with what would happen with a quiet zone running through that neighborhood. And of course, I'm in support of this. She talked about the ARPA funds that we have. We still have about $13 million in that ARPA fund, somewhere in that general vicinity. And I think this is a great investment, once again, and concurring again, to do it now rather than wait until down the line, because we don't know what costs would be 8 to 10 years from now. I'm sure it's going to be more expensive. Nothing's going to go backward in terms of costs. But, this is one where, I'm talking about the people on the other side of the tracks, literally, going up to Vail, but then not being able to move those quiet zones into the areas that run directly through the neighborhood. It has been talk of the horns and the noise, but no, not a whole bunch of complaints. I have heard some complaints of people that would be new renting in the neighborhood and things like that, in the Eastport neighborhood especially. But I believe that we should go ahead and take the chance to make this right. Once again, I'm going to continue to use that analogy of the other side of the tracks, because I think this was important. You cannot tell people we're going to develop and do certain things right up to a certain point, and then this neighborhood is excluded because of dollars when we have the dollars.
Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Thank you. So, Mr. Nolan, I got a question for you. 2 questions, actually. So I don't know if you know this off the top of your head or have a general idea. What did it cost to have that study done initially? Because if it's something that we're looking at and we may want to entertain doing it with the other rail lines, at least we have a general idea. And then with what you know from the industry, by creating these quiet zones, I understand the safety measures that are put in place for motor vehicles, but are there any advanced safety measures put in place for pedestrian traffic or foot traffic through these areas?
The first question is the cost of the study. I want to say it was several $100,000, but Tim, do you remember? We'd have to go back and take a look. It's not prohibitive, but it's not inexpensive to embark on one of these undertakings. And it's going to be also based upon how many crossings are you looking at. Obviously, we have a 3-mile section approximately of town that we're looking at with 30 some crossings with different configurations. So, that played into it. So every cost is going to be different and maybe more or less involved. Tim, do you have a recollection of the cost? We can get that to you if we'll provide you that additional information.
Yeah, I don't have the exact number because I was with the other company at the time, but I don't think the initial study was more than $100,000. And typically, depending on the number of crossings and how much work we need to do, it could be $50,000 to $100,000 for that first evaluation.
Thanks, Tim. Your second question is, what can you do for pedestrians?
Is there already?
We're actually putting in some enhanced pedestrian crossing warnings in as part of the project in the downtown area right now. Okay. Because there will be a second track, which there hasn't been before. We're going to put in what's called another train audible warning, another train coming, voice activated warnings. Let me also emphasize, an engineer, even in a quiet zone, will blow the horn. If an engineer feels that there's any reason to blow the horn, they're required to. They will not hesitate if they have any concerns about safety. It just means that they won't, as a routine matter, get on the horn at Carroll Avenue and get off the horn at Sheridan. Almost a continuous horn.
It just made me think about pedestrians as well as maybe cyclists or whatever. They, cars may be prohibited from going through with the gates or whatever, but someone in a bike or something may think they can make it and not realize the train is.
Where there's pedestrian sidewalks, we put in pedestrian gates.
Okay.
So that's also an added safety feature. Plus, a lot of these crossings were crossbucks and stop signs. They're getting gates, lights, and bells. So you'll have the flashing lights and you'll have the activation of the bells as additional audible warning or visual warning with the flashing of the lights. I'd also add just one thing to put in perspective. If you had come to us 10 years ago and said you want a quiet zone on our railroad in Michigan City, we were trying to add up what that cost would be, just to give you some perspective about, I know $1 million is a lot of money. I get it. But just to imagine what it would have taken to put the quiet zone in if Michigan City was paying for it 10 years ago, you would have had to separate the traffic on 10th and 11th Streets. The FRA would not let you go forward. You would have to put in all of the gates, lights, and bells of the crossings that we're putting in place now. And you would have to put in the supplemental safety measures. So roughly, it's the price tag in Michigan City, take out the parking structure and the station, we're probably talking about $80 million worth of cost that qualifies Michigan City to put the quiet zone in between Michigan Boulevard and Sheridan. Now, we're unique because we have street running. CSX and Amtrak don't have street running, so you don't have to pay for that separation, so that cost will know. I'm not trying to tell you that you're going to see that kind of cost in these other areas, but if you would ask the South Shore to do it, that's what it would have taken to implement this project. So we're making this happen, and we've invested the money to make it happen in this portion of the corridor for another $1 million, or about 1%. You can complete the corridor quiet zone if you take it from Carillon.
Does anybody have anything else?
Michael Vinson, 6 Devonshire Court. I understand this is for the double track project, and I don't want to hijack the workshop, but there's been some interest in the CX, I'll just call it CX line. And there's several people here that have already done research. I started email chain flow October with city council members and have not heard any replies. So I would just like to ask city council members, go back to your emails or reach out and let's reestablish some communication.
Now this was in regards to quiet zones.
Quiet zones on the CXX Amtrak CN line.
That's
yes.
what we were I was just asking Mr.
Right.
Nolan about what the
Yeah.
cost be to do those type of studies to look at getting that done. So
Yeah, I just want to let you know there's been some research done going into last year, but very little response from city council, from emails that I've seen. So I'd like to,
Mr. Vincent, can
Yeah.
I ask you this question?
Mhm.
Did you send an email to the city planner and the mayor about these quiet zones and on these different rail lines?
no,
You did not?
I did not.
Don't you think that they have to initiate things?
I would have been more than happy to if the email was not ignored and just replied to and asked me to do that. I would have got anybody involved.
So in response to the email being ignored, I don't think anyone on the council blatantly ignores emails. We get a lot of emails from
I understand.
entities. The best way to get an email to us, I would say, especially since you're with the city, send it through the clerk's office and she'll send it directly to us.
What about
those notes?
what about members of the public? I see some members of the public here that have tried to send emails. And even before I was on the board, I've done the same thing.
Yeah.
We have to do better.
Sometimes they get lost in the shuffle.
I understand.
Get bombarded with
I
emails
understand.
from not only citizens, from vendors and people advertising, and sometimes they get lost. So.
I understand. I know to you it's 200 emails in your inbox, but to the person sending it, it's the one they're concerned about.
And sometimes phone calls work also.
Mr. Vincent, that's an interesting discussion that you get into because you are on the Board of Works. Have you discussed this with the mayor and the city planner since you've been on the Board of Works?
No, I have not. It's
Okay. Well,
I started with the council.
Oh.
You know, I figure the council is pretty prominent, and you've got, how many years do you like to say you're on? 17? It's a lot of experience. It's a lot of knowledge.
Well,
trying to lead off of that. I'm trying to
Mr.
learn
Vincent,
the process.
Mr. Vincent, please.
Yes.
I asked you a question because, see,
The answer was no.
the administration actually needs to start the initiative, okay? And then to create and develop the consensus, all right, comes from that group. And then the consensus comes from the city council. So I would think that if, we'll see what the city planner and maybe the mayor might
Okay.
want to say
Duly noted.
about this.
Very good.
Please, you're
No,
not running this meeting.
I
Don't
understand.
interrupt me.
No, I didn't want to.
All right,
I didn't want to take up a
please.
lot of time. I know we're
Mr.
discussing
Is
other
that
things.
that's coming. The questions are going to be asked because some people live on the other side of the tracks, and I've had comments from people who live in and around the tracks for years. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So with that discussion with Mr. Vincent, I think it's important to note that he's on the Board of Works and that he has not discussed this or brought it up. It's a good idea. I was going to bring it up later on because since this initiative has started, that there are other crossings in the city of Michigan City that I believe should be looked at. And I believe that this is not only for one area of Michigan City, but this is a quality of life issue for a lot of neighborhoods in the city of Michigan City. And I think that we should not just look at one area of the city. I know that, you know, we're looking at that right now, and the discussion is about that right now. But I also think that, as was brought up earlier by the lady from Michiana Shores, that, yeah, Julie,
Trudy Cole.
and that the CXS and Amtrak are going down those tracks, which has nothing to do with the South Shore. But also, I think we got the Canadian National that runs multiple trains and a lot more trains on the South line, on going across Franklin Street, going across Wabash Street, going across Ohio Street, going across, is it Tilliston? No, Tillin Ave. And then further on down, it goes over Carroll. So, I mean, those affect a lot of neighborhoods also. And, you know, I think that if we're going to do it one area, we should look at doing it in other areas and be comprehensive that we do what we can do in those areas to limit the amount of noise. Because that, I think, will enhance people wanting to live in those areas and bring another quality of life. Just like when we do this, the initial thrust was in the middle of town in the Northern Historical District. And I can see, you know, they wanted to get something rolling to make that area more palatable and more sellable. So I think that the city, which is, we don't have a city engineer per se, that we need to look at doing an initiative and creating some kind of plan to do these different areas and have a commitment from the administration to help the other neighborhoods in our community with the other monies we have available to us. So with that, I mean, I think that everybody should be treated equally. And if we're going to do an initiative which will make a significant quality of life change, is that we should do it in other areas of the city and start with doing a study and moving forward on it. Because it sounds like, Mr. Nolan, how long did you said that study took? About 6 months, or because it's a comprehensive study.
It's a comprehensive study. It took about 6 months. I would also point out that there's a timing factor for us on this project.
Right.
So what I just want to urge the council to do is that, as Tim had said, there's a public input process. We finish that public input process, then it goes to the Federal Railroad Administration, and they can take up to a year. We want to make sure that when the project opens up here, we're positioned to have everything in place. And so when we start these new operations with these new trains, we should be starting it the right way. And if we're going to do the quiet zone, it should start when new revenue service starts. You know, there's 39 trains a day. We're adding 14 more. And so there would be potentially significantly more noise. We want to roll this out in concert with the opening of operations. So if you want to talk and have conversations, and Tim Oster, who was with Benesch and was with CTC, we specifically went out and hired them when they were with the smaller firm because that's what they specialized in. I'm sure they'd be willing to have a conversation with the city if that's your desire. You may want to go and find somebody else. These guys know what they're doing. They're specialists in this area. But I would urge that if you're going to move forward with the project, don't lump them all together. We have the ability to go forward now on the South Shore project.
Thank you, Mike. Mr. Councilman Don Prespolinski.
A couple comments, couple questions. The reason when I saw the resolution, and all it said is that we were going to put in our administration was looking at $850,000, on 5 quiet zone crossings, and that's it. Nothing else was said. So that's why I requested that we table this, have a workshop, so we know, where's the $900,000 coming from? Don't know. I don't know. I mean, Councilwoman Deitch tonight said that possibly ARP money that it's going to be coming from. And that's another issue because we got 16 million, which we all know of. We got 8 million now. We haven't even had a workshop yet to decide where this money's going to be spending. But we're just going to take another million and chop that off the 8 million. So now we're down to 7 million. And we don't even have the projects in line of what we're doing with the ARP money. So how can we just all of a sudden say, hey, you know what? Let's take a mill out of there and we'll put it on this project. To me, that's not the way you do business. You got to have a plan with this. First of all, the ARP money, what we're going to do with it. And I haven't heard any plan yet or a workshop. So that's number one. And the way I understand, take it back, I think it's like 854,000. That's an estimate. So what is the total cost of this going to be? I mean, we're talking estimate, and all we're doing is talking about a resolution. That's all we're talking about right now. We're not even talking about an ordinance spending any money on this. That's another thing that has to be considered. And I don't have any problem with quiet zones. It's probably a good idea. But I'm going to be frank. If we're going to do it for one neighborhood on that side of the tracks, we need to do it for every neighborhood on all sides of the tracks in Michigan City. Because I understand that people live close to the tracks, I live 2 blocks from the C&O tracks on Franklin Street. And I hear the train, all the time in the morning, in the evening. It doesn't really bother me all that much. I mean, I kind of know it's 5 o'clock in the morning and I can start getting focused on what I need to do. But to be fair, if I'm going to vote for this, I'm going to vote for it for everybody. And if we go ahead with this project, get those 5 crossings done, that's fine. But we got to have something in the plan to talk to these other railroads. And if we got to take another $1 million out of the ARP money, because everybody seems to think that that's okay, that we'll just keep taking money out of there and maybe drain it dry before we get anything in substance put together, then we will go and lobby the other railroads. We'll go lobby the Amtrak, we'll go lobby the CSX, Canadian Northern, whoever may be running on those rails, and see if they'll buy into it and get it done. If we're going to do it for one part of the city, you got to do it for everybody. Because if you take a ride, now, you know, we talk about living close to the tracks. We talk about being disturbed by the train and the train whistles. You take a ride down Wabash Street, all right? And you go over the railroad tracks, CSX tracks, right there on Wabash Street. And that gentleman that lives in that house, he don't live any more than 100 feet from that railroad track. And I know that some of us know where that house is at. And I know that that gentleman is all in favor of a quiet zone. But how can you deny him a quiet zone here where he lives 100 feet away from a track when somebody 6 blocks away says, well, I live in that neighborhood. Yeah, and, you know, we should have that. We should have that. We're going to do it for one, we do it for all. For me, it's a community thing. We should have it. It's a quality of life thing. We should have it. So that's something to think about. So my 3 things, the whole community should be involved. Number 2, if we're going to do it for one using ARP money, we do it for all using ARP money. Apparently ARP money's going to be used for the number one thing now is quiet zones in Michigan City instead of other things that we were looking at doing. And that's all I have to say about this subject. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. or Councilman Don Prispolinski. Yes, Angie.
Let me say this. It's not about being unfair to other parts of the city and draining the ARP funds dry. It's prudent for us, since there's a project before us that it's on the table that's happening, that we take a look at it. And that's why this came up. Now, I'm not saying that this is not something we do in the future for other areas. The planning department can reach out and put forth a plan. The plan might take 5 years to do something like this. You said that the study took a while. It's just that this is before us because of this project right now, and that they're doing part of it, so why not extend it and complete it? It's not saying that, now with ARP, I agree with you wholeheartedly on the ARP stuff. Now, we're behind the 8 ball, I'll say that. But it's all about timing, and that's why it was presented. It was that we're dealing with a quiet zone, so why not extend? Again, just like when you do any project, Jeff Wright used to say this all the time. Well, you mobilize them in all these different places, it costs more money. They're going to be doing this work already. Now, I think we put something forward and we put money together for a plan on how we want to deal with the rest of the city. I don't think anybody's saying no to that. I just think it's happening, and they have to put the plan, turn the paperwork in, so it has to be done. I don't think anybody is saying neglect the rest of the city. I don't think that's the case. It's the timing of what's occurred. And with any type of planning, I'm just going to say, over time, we haven't done a good job of it. We talk about our streets and all this stuff and how we don't have a plan to move forward. I just think it's the timing. It's not saying that. Now, I will say with ARP, council will have a committee. We've talked about it. The mayor has a committee. We are trying to get a date. We hadn't met. But still, it's going to be upon the council to make decisions fully on, what we want to move forward and negotiate moving forward. And we do have some time for that. And we're going to get the other amount of money next month. So we'll have the rest of the money. But I don't like nickel and diming it either. It's just that this is something that's before us. And that's the reason why. But I'm not saying that we should neglect any other part of the city on quiet zones. I would love for the whole city to have a quiet zone. We just need to know what the cost is and then put a plan on how we're going to implement it. And those are my words. I just don't want people to think that it's picking and choosing one or the other. It's the timing of the thing. The timing. That's all it is. And there is money that's available. So I just want to make that comment because it felt like we were being neglectful, and we're not trying to be neglectful. We want to be thoughtful on how we deal with the rest of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
Michigan City Mayor Dwayne Perry. I'm going to respond.
The chair recognizes you. Thank you.
I'm going to address your comment about the administration not being engaged. The administration's been engaged since day one. The previous administration was engaged. This is $1 billion plus project by the time we're done with it. There's a saying in my industry, which is a big industry, just like the steel industry is, that when you eat an elephant, eat it one bite at a time. There's no neighborhood, no area of Michigan City that's going to be neglected in this. As far as the ARP money goes, I think the first expenditure that we're going to make, and I know Ms. Nelson Deitch has been a part of this discussion, is cybersecurity because of the major threat of that in this country. Now, any member of the council that has a special interest that they want that money spent on, you've got 3 representatives on that, on the ARPA committee. Councilman Bryant Dabney, Councilman Angie Nelson Deitch, and Councilman Dahlia Zigas. Convey your wishes to them. But as far as you have the final say so because you hold the purse strings of the city, but per legislation, no expense can be incurred unless both the administration and the council agree to it. So we've got to work together. And this council, this committee, this ARPA committee was established just for that. If you want to spend all $16 million of the ARPA money, let us know where you want to spend it. We're not going to agree to it, but back to what I said, there is no area of the cities that is going to be ignored. We got to take this one bite at a time. And I think your comments that you're making tonight, you're talking like this is an election year. I think both of you are grandstanding a little bit.
Mr. Mayor, if you could, don't make a comment and walk away from the mic, please. I got a comment for you. There's no grandstanding going on here. And I take that an exceptional remark, and I respectfully disagree with that. The comments that are being made, let me finish. If you want to speak and return a comment, go to the mic. But here is the situation. There are a lot of neighborhoods that in the city of Michigan City that have railroad crossings there. And that for you to say that we're grandstanding, we're bringing the issue forward, or I am, and I believe that Don, my brother Don, Councilman Prisbalinski is, and I also think that the point being is that the study was done in 2017 by the railroad. So I guess the point that I'm looking at is we're asked to spend money, but I would like to see a commitment. And the reason I said the administration is so that we have some kind of language or a letter by you saying that we're going to examine these other crossings and do something, because the amount of money being spent, I think that every neighborhood has equal right for quality of life. And that's why that I'm speaking about it. And it's not about grandstanding. I take extreme exception to your remarks.
That's
okay?
fine, that's your
And
prerogative.
it's not an election year, but this is what it is. There's the South Shore goes through 11th Street, which is in the 2nd Ward. The Canadian Northern goes through the 2nd Ward. It also touches the 3rd Ward. It touches the 5th Ward. Is that some of those crossings could be dealt with and limit the amount of noise that's in the communities. Because, you know, I will say this, is that I wonder about doing a noise study on the decibel levels on some of these neighborhoods, on what those decibel levels are. And I'm not trying to be, I'm sincere about it, because I think that, like, say out by Knapp School, there's a lot of small children. In that track, they start blowing that horn, which is out in the county, and they're blowing it before they get to Wabash Street, and they're blowing it when they hit Franklin Street and right on down the road. And the other night, I don't know what was going on the railroad tracks, if they were having a party, but I swear that horn was going all the way through town. And because I was listening to it, matter of fact, I was doing dishes in the kitchen and I was listening to it for quite a while, Mr. Mayor. And I just thought about it, saying, why do we have to listen to this? Why do we have to listen to this? Probably doing an intersection is at the cost is somewhere in a roughly maybe $220,000 for quality of life just on that line. So, you know,
Well, let's fund it. Let's do it.
well,
I'm
this
not going to ignore, this administration's not going to ignore any area in Michigan City.
this is what
You
I'm
have my
looking
commitment publicly. Right here, I'm saying that. Right now, what we're talking about is double track. That's from Sheridan to the Boulevard. That's the bite of this elephant that we're chewing on right now. We got a lot more to eat, and we're going to take care of the whole thing.
Well,
But you can't do it all at once.
I understand that.
Okay.
But are we going to do it in a timely manner and not wait till next year? Because as long as we wait, it's going to cost more money. That's all.
Okay.
The longer we wait, are we going to have a meeting then on that? When we set up a meeting?
Sure, we can set up a meeting.
And then we have a commitment from you that you're going to do something with the.
No, I'm making a commitment, we're going to have a meeting.
Oh,
We're going to talk about it.
okay.
What do you want? Do you want to
Okay.
dig up Michigan City from border to border at once? We're going to eat this elephant a bite at a time. We're going to do the double track. Then we're going to do the east side of town. We're going to look at CSX, Canadian National. Everything we do is for the betterment of Michigan City, and it's for every neighborhood in Michigan City.
All right. Well, with that being said,
That's my commitment here and now.
Gentleman from the firm that was hired by the railroad said that study, if I'm thinking wrong or right, was around $100,000. Can we start the initiative on doing a study on some of these lines?
You approve it, I'll appropriate it.
I think that you have to initiate appropriations.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
10-4, we're good to go.
I think that $100,000 was an estimate for this one portion of the track that we're talking about right now. I think it'll be a lot more to do the entire rail lines across the city for multiple railways. So I think we're looking at right now just making sure that this part is done while we're doing the rest of it, so it doesn't get overlooked, and then we have to go back and revisit it at a later time. And then at a later time, we make a effort to look at the rest of it. I mean, I lived on 8th Street for 5 years before, and I was, the Amtrak. Every time the best part of the movie came on, that's when the rail line came past. Or every time you're on the phone in the middle of a conversation with someone important, that's when they came through blaring. So I understand the need for this, but it's like you gotta, do what's in front of you right now. I don't know if anybody knows about, older cars, maybe some of us older people, I guess. Every time you go get your engine serviced or whatever, and say you need water pump done. It's like, well, you might as well change the timer chain while you're in there because it's only got a couple miles left. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what they always recommend, to do it while they're in there so you don't have to open it all up again. So I think that's where we are with this, and that's all we're trying to get done now. So thank you.
Oh, sorry. Damn me. I'm sorry.
Okay, just say,
Jill,
hi, this is Judy Cole again, and I've talked to, I can't remember the council person's name in LaPorte, but I talked to her a few months ago, and she said they're working on the same thing, on a quiet zone, and she said the hospital really wants us to have a quiet zone in LaPorte because the hospital is right next to the crossing. So anyway, you might call somebody, the council people in LaPorte, because she was willing to talk to me, so she'd probably be more willing to talk to you. And then I called Whiting, and I'd have to look up my records, so I talked to a council person there, and she said that they were so glad to get it done. It took them a while because one railroad wouldn't cooperate or something to that effect. But anyway, there was some new housing, like duplexes or townhouses that were built right near the railroad track. So now it's, better for them because they don't have to listen to the train blasting. So maybe call them and see what they were going through.
Thank you. Mr. Damney.
First of all, I'm going to lead in by saying that was a great analogy, Sean, about when they go in there and find something else wrong with the engine. That was, actually, I wrote that down. So I like that. They kind of threw me off of what I was going to say. That was so nice. I wrote that down. But I guess my question would be to the others, and you can hear some of the dissent, and that we want to do the whole city. And I understand that. But now I'm asking the question, are we going to wait for studies for all these other crossings first before we continue on with this one? Or what we're trying to do in terms of getting the quiet zones here? And I'm going to apply Sean's analogy. We're already with the engine. We're already in there looking. We found something wrong. Now there's something else wrong that needs to be repaired. Are we going to repair that while we go back and do the study for all the other 30 crossings or however many there are in the city? Are we going to put this one on hold to wait for the study for those? Am I hearing that, or I guess that's just a question.
I was hearing that we go ahead and do these 5 crossings while South Shore is doing theirs collectively. And then
If I may, Councilman Don Prisbalinski.
First of all, I know that the mayor left, and that's fine. But first of all, I'm an elected city councilman, and I've been up here for 10 years, and I'm not grandstanding on any issues. I have a right to speak and to talk as freely as I want to, and I just talk about the facts and what the people in the city of Michigan City, the whole city have elected me to do, is to represent every one of them. So, I don't know why the mayor got so upset, but, can't take a few comments of what the councilman's talking about. This is what it's engagement back and forth, and this is the way democracy is supposed to work. In response to this resolution being approved and then moving on to get these other crossings studied, since we have 2 members of the ARP committee here already, Councilwoman Deitch and Councilman Dabney, what I'm suggesting is that we take the funding out of the ARP money to do the study on these other crossings and see what that's going to cost and move on with that. And, take a look at this South Shore thing and possibly get this approved. But there has to be an agreement that with the ARP money, it's going to be used for the study for the CSX, for the Amtrak, and all quiet zones through Michigan City. Thank you.
Quick question.
Thank you, Councilman Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, just a quick comment. So if we, this is probably for Skylar, if we were to say, if we, at some point we allocated ARP money to do the studies, and then we determined that it's viable for us to go through with doing the quiet zones in the rest of the city. Some of the parts of the track that are going through TIF areas, will we be able to use TIF funds to help portions of that project so the whole burden isn't on, whatever funds we have with the city?
If it could be related to economic development, then I would say possibly.
Okay.
If there's money left by the time you get ready to do those things. Keep in mind, a lot of the North TIF goes away in 2028. So that's going to be reducing over time, which is the goal of redevelopment. Yeah. So you just got to keep that in mind. There may not be as much money left in the Northwest. So,
okay.
I'm
just curious about that.
Yeah, I would also say, if you're going to allocate ARPA or whatever you're going to put in there, it would probably be wise to just, it's probably going to be a project that the Board of Works would probably initiate through.
I was saying ARPA money just for the study.
No, totally. But it would probably be through the Board of Works. It's going to be dealing with rights of way, closing of those rights of way. But also keep in mind, as Mike alluded to, it's not just the study. You've got to be ready to close streets, make the improvements that need to be, the drop gates, all that. So it's more than just going to be a lot of money, depending on how many crossings, et cetera. And you may not want certain crossings closed. And it may be some arguments and back and forth on that. So keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilman President.
Yeah, Skylar, you may be able to answer this question. So this $900,000, is that for the study, or does that to do all the construction work to put these crossings into place?
The study's done. This is the actual estimate of the construction costs. So we've done the study work. Yes.
So I'm gonna, if there's any more comments, we gotta.
Online.
Oh, okay.
This is Tommy Kolavic from 1316 Ohio Street. To be honest with you, the train horns really don't bother me. I only live 3 blocks south of the 11th and Ohio Street crossing, and they just don't bother me. I live in my bed and I snore like a grizzly bear. I do own a vacant lot. I bought the tax sale just one parcel north of the 11th and Ohio Street crossing, right across from Fire Station number 1. And I think the more noise is going to be when they put up the signals and crossing when the train goes by. All the time the thing gonna go ding 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 ding. It's this Mike Nolan's there from NICTE. I got a couple other issues I want to bring up if it's okay with you, Mr. President.
Tom?
What?
Is it about?
No, it's not about the fire zone.
We got to get rolling here, so I'm not going to allow it.
Mr. President, thank you.
Thank you. I will say that. Is there any more comments by anybody in the audience? So, with that being said, that I want to make a final comment. Is that Mr. Nolan, if you could, I'd like to get Tim's address and phone number or the firm, but also is so that everybody understands where I'm at on this issue. Is that I'm trying to build a consensus here and get a commitment to do things for the quality of life of the city of Michigan City, and that's what we should be looking forward to. And I understand about doing the quiet zone. I really do. And I think that as the elephant grew, now, well, I don't really like that phraseology. I think as the issue developed, is that it brought a lot of things to light. And I will say this. I've been elected in the 2nd Ward for a long time, and people complain about it and complain about it on Wabash Street and that crossing by the Canadian National. They complain about the 11th Street, the South Shore, and for years. And a gentleman told me at one time that his father lived on Wabash Street, that they did something like this when he lived in the city of Kokomo. And I think we need to that it's not anything that's not, that can't be done. You know what I mean? It can be done. And I think it's an excellent way to spend any monies that we can spend. Because I think that'll bring, like, I understand that, Mike, about, Mr. Nolan, excuse me, about the engineers can blow the whistle and about railroad safety. And I think that this brought the thing to light, I think, and that to have some open discussion about this, doing something for all the neighborhoods in the city of Michigan City. Thank you. And with that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting because we got to get out of here. Tim, thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you so much.